It always begins quietly. Not with open hostility, not with a threat you can point to, but with something small enough to doubt yourself over. A joke that lands just a little too sharp, a reply that never comes, a decision made around you instead of with you. You feel it before you can name it, a tightening in the chest, a cold drop in the stomach, but you ignore it. You smile. You tell yourself you're being mature. You tell yourself you're taking the high road. That's the first mistake. Because disrespect is never loud at the start. It doesn't kick the door in, it tests the handle. It leans its weight against the frame to see if anything gives. And every time you laugh it off, every time you swallow the discomfort and say, "It's fine," you're not being kind. You're negotiating your own worth downward. You're teaching the world a dangerous lesson, that access to you comes cheap. This is the part no one warns you about. Disrespect is not a moment. It's a process, a slow calibration. Like a predator circling prey, it starts with distance, with probing, with small movements meant to measure resistance. And silence, your silence, becomes data. It tells people how far they can go. It tells them whether the fence is electric or decorative. Centuries ago, Machiavelli understood something most people still refuse to accept. The instant you are perceived as weak, the contest is already over. He didn't write for people who wanted to be admired. He wrote for those who wanted to survive among other human beings. Because survival, socially speaking, has never been about purity of intention. It has always been about perception, leverage, and timing. If you're tired of being the one who gives more than they receive, if you're tired of feeling invisible in rooms where you should have weight, then listen carefully. This is not about becoming cruel. This is about removing the parts of you that invite invasion. Think of it like surgery. Something has been growing inside your behavior, your need for approval, your fear of friction, and it's time to cut it out before it spreads. The question that keeps you awake at night isn't really, why do they treat me this way? That's too easy. The real question, the one you avoid because you already sense the answer, is, why do I allow it? Because whether you realize it or not, you are sending signals constantly. Through your posture, through your tone, through how quickly you apologize, through how available you make yourself. These signals don't lie, even when your words do. Human beings are relentless scanners of hierarchy. We read rooms the way sailors read weather. Who can be ignored? Who must be respected? Who will tolerate pressure and who will respond? Disrespect begins as a test. A late arrival without explanation. An interruption. A joke at your expense, slipped into casual conversation. The other person is watching closely, waiting to see if the boundary holds. If it does, if you correct them with a look, a pause, a firm presence, the test ends. They recalibrate. But if it bends, if you smile nervously and say it's okay, something shifts. You've just granted permission. Not consciously, but psychologically. You've shown them that your territory is open land. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They think tolerating small slights makes them easygoing. In reality, it makes them editable. And once someone believes they can edit you, your time, your voice, your dignity, they will. Not because they're evil, but because they're human. Machiavelli observed that people are driven by two forces, love and fear. In the modern world, fear doesn't mean violence. It means consequence. It means the fear of losing access, status, or advantage. When you tolerate disrespect, you remove consequence. You train others to believe that nothing happens when they cross you. Think about the last time you were spoken over. In a meeting, in a conversation, you started a sentence and someone steamrolled right through it. What did you do? Did you stop talking? Did you apologize? Did you wait politely for permission to continue? In that instant, you weren't just interrupted, you were repositioned, and your body knew it. That hollow feeling afterward wasn't embarrassment, it was self-betrayal. Disrespect lives in the space between your dignity and your fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being labeled difficult, fear of rejection. So you choose the slow poison of tolerance instead of the sharp pain of resistance. But here's the truth most people learn too late. Conflict avoided is never conflict eliminated. It's merely delayed, and it returns with interest. You don't kill disrespect by explaining how it makes you feel. That's a fantasy sold by people who don't understand power dynamics. When respect is absent, explanations become leverage for the other side. You don't negotiate with someone who's already stepping on your boundaries. You change the environment they're standing in. Imagine throwing a ball against a wall. It comes back. There's engagement. Now imagine throwing that same ball into a black void. No sound, no return. The game ends. That void is non-reaction, not weakness, not passivity. Precision. When someone disrespects you, they expect a script. Anger proves they can move you. Retreat proves they own the space. Silence, calm, deliberate silence, breaks the script. You look. You pause. You don't rush to fill the air. You let the weight fall back on them. And suddenly, the discomfort is no longer yours. This is where the shift begins. Not with louder words, but with gravity. Not with confrontation, but with control. Disrespect feeds on your movement. Starve it, and it has nowhere to live. Silence, when used correctly, is not empty. It is a mirror. And most people hate mirrors unless they like what they see. When you refuse to react, when you let an insult hang in the air without rescuing it, something fascinating happens. The spotlight swings back onto the person who spoke. They start to feel exposed. You'll notice the micro signals first, the fidgeting, the forced smile, the sudden need to explain. I was just joking. Why are you so serious? That scramble is not confidence. It's loss of control. This is where Machiavellian power quietly takes shape. The prince does not wrestle in the mud. He watches from above. He understands that attention is currency and emotion is fuel. Why would you spend either on someone who just tried to lower your status? When you withhold reaction, you're sending a message more potent than any insult in return. You're telling them their words are too light to move you. This isn't passivity, it's strategy. Think of it as stepping out of range. The insult was meant to hook you, to pull you into a predictable exchange. Anger, defense, justification. When you deny that exchange, you break the mechanism. The machine stalls because it was built to run on your response. But silence alone is not enough. You also need perception. Machiavelli's fox is just as important as his lion. The fox sees traps before stepping into them. And disrespect is often disguised as something harmless. Humor, curiosity, concern. The backhanded compliment. You're actually smart for someone without experience. You look good. Did you finally lose weight? These are not neutral statements. They're status probes. If you accept them at face value, you lose. If you argue, you lose. The fox does something colder. He observes intention. He understands that the goal isn't truth. It's positioning. This is where cold empathy comes in. Not emotional absorption, but clinical clarity. Like a surgeon examining tissue. You ask yourself, not how do I feel, but what are they trying to gain? Most disrespect is not strength. It's compensation. People lower others when they feel their own footing slipping. The secure don't need to test fences. only the uncertain push to see what moves. When you recognize this, the sting fades. The insult stops feeling personal and starts feeling diagnostic. It tells you more about them than it ever could about you. This shift from victim to analyst is decisive. Victims react. Analysts choose. And choice is where power lives. There are moments when agreeing is stronger than resisting. This is counterintuitive, but devastatingly effective. Someone says, "You're lazy." You respond, calm and unbothered, "Yeah, it's efficient." "You're weird." "Absolutely." This technique, often called fogging, removes friction entirely. An insult needs resistance to function. Without it, it dissolves. Throw a stone at a wall and it cracks. Throw it into fog and it disappears. You're not conceding. You're refusing to accept the premise that the statement has power over you. The other person expects defense or offense. Agreement collapses their frame. They're left holding a weapon that no longer works. But understand this clearly. Fogging and silence are tools, not a lifestyle. There are situations where disengagement is strength, and situations where it becomes permission. Machiavelli never advocated endless restraint. He advocated precision. This is where the lion appears. When a boundary is crossed repeatedly, when someone persists despite your withdrawal, silence becomes inadequate. At that point, words are still useless, but action is not. The Machiavellian rule is simple. Consequences speak louder than explanations. You don't warn, you don't threaten, you don't announce. You act. Someone interrupts you habitually, you stop speaking and redirect your attention elsewhere. Someone disrespects your time, you stop offering it. Someone treats you as optional, you remove yourself from the equation entirely. This is the part most people fail to execute because it requires a willingness to lose. Lose access. Lose familiarity. Lose the illusion of connection. But leverage only exists where departure is possible. If you are not prepared to walk away, you are negotiating from a position of weakness, whether you admit it or not. Scarcity is not manipulation. It is a fact of value. What is everywhere is taken for granted. What can be lost is treated carefully. When you remove your presence, you force recalibration. People feel the absence before they understand it. The warmth you once gave, freely, constantly, suddenly registers as a privilege that is no longer guaranteed. This is not the silent treatment. The silent treatment seeks reaction. Strategic withdrawal seeks realignment. You don't disappear to punish. You withdraw to protect and reposition. Polite, professional, distant. You become surface instead of depth. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing respect, it begins to chase you. Questions appear. Is everything okay? You've been quiet lately. This is not concern. It's loss of control registering. Do not rush to soothe it. Let the cold do its work. But none of this holds if your entire world revolves around the person or environment you're withdrawing from. Power requires independence, a mission, a center of gravity that does not depend on external approval. If you are orbiting someone else's life, their disrespect will always destabilize you. You must become the sun, not the satellite. Build something that survives without their attention. Skills, body, mind, resources. When you know you can leave and thrive, your posture changes automatically. You don't need to perform boundaries. You embody them. And a person who can leave is a person who cannot be owned. At a certain point, you have to confront an uncomfortable truth. The way people treat you on the outside often mirrors how you treat yourself on the inside. This is where most discussions about disrespect stop short, because this part removes the comfort of blame. The Machiavellian view is brutal but clean. If disrespect keeps finding you, it's because somewhere within you, it feels familiar. Think of it like a thermostat. Your mind has a default setting for how much disrespect feels normal. If you grew up around chaos, inconsistency, or emotional volatility, your system adapted. You learned to tolerate. You learned to endure. Over time, tolerance stopped feeling like pain and started feeling like home. So when someone treats you well, you feel uneasy. And when someone treats you poorly, you lean in, trying to fix, to earn, to stabilize. This is not weakness, it's conditioning. But conditioning can be rewritten. The ancient Stoics spoke of the inner citadel, a fortress inside the mind that no one can breach without permission. Machiavelli would agree, but he would sharpen the idea. A fortress is only real if it's defended. And defense begins with how you relate to yourself when no one is watching. If you break promises to yourself, others will sense it. If you talk to yourself with contempt, others will pick up the scent. If you apologize for existing, taking up space, needing rest, wanting more, your body broadcasts submission long before your mouth opens. Humans are exquisitely sensitive to this frequency. They may not know why they feel entitled to push you, but they feel it. To kill disrespect at the root, you must reset the thermostat. That reset begins with discipline, not motivation. Every promise you keep to yourself is a brick laid in the inner citadel. You say you'll train, then you train. You say you'll leave on time, then you leave. You say no, and you hold it. Each act reinforces a new baseline. I am reliable to myself. And when you trust yourself, disrespect stops feeling tolerable. It starts feeling invasive. At that stage, boundaries don't require effort. They become reflexes. You don't argue. You don't debate. You recoil instinctively, like touching a hot surface. The nervous system learns, I am safe when I defend my dignity. This is what people mean when they say presence. It's not charisma. It's not volume. It's coherence. Your words, actions, posture, and self-regard are aligned. There is no gap to exploit. People can sense this alignment. It has a texture, a weight. Some call it confidence. Others mislabel it arrogance. In truth, it's danger, not uncontrolled aggression, but contained capability. A person who can cause damage, but doesn't need to advertise it. This is where the concept of the shadow becomes essential. Carl Jung warned that denying the darker parts of yourself doesn't make you good. It makes you weak. A harmless person is not virtuous. They are simply incapable. Virtue only exists when restraint is a choice, not a necessity. To handle disrespect, you must integrate your shadow. You must know, not fantasize, but know that you are capable of cruelty, exclusion, and destruction. That you could dismantle someone's reputation, withdraw your loyalty, or cut them out without remorse. And that you choose not to unless it's required. This knowledge changes everything. When you know you have a sword, you don't need to draw it. Others sense the hilt. Your calm stops looking passive and starts looking deliberate. Your kindness stops reading as submission and starts reading as control. This is the Machiavellian paradox. Peace is maintained not by innocence, but by readiness. If you cannot defend yourself psychologically, your kindness becomes an invitation. If you can, and choose restraint, your kindness becomes a privilege. Now, let's bring this into the real world. Tomorrow someone will test you. It might be subtle. A comment like, "Must be nice to leave early," or, "Oh, you finally decided to join us." The old version of you would laugh, explain, apologize. The new version does something different. You stop. You turn your body fully. You hold eye contact for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. You say nothing. Then you return to what you were doing. That pause is not empty. It communicates volumes. I heard you, I understood you, and it wasn't worth my response. Alternatively, you use curiosity like a blade. What do you mean by that? Said calmly, without accusation. Now the covert attack is dragged into daylight. They either own it or retreat. Either way, the hierarchy resets. Your heart will race. Your hands might shake. That's normal. Courage is not calmness. It's action in the presence of fear. Each time you do this, you rewire your nervous system. You teach it that confrontation is survivable, that dignity is safer than avoidance. Over time, the fear dissolves. What replaces it is something quieter and stronger. Self-respect. Not the loud performative kind, but the kind that anchors you, the kind that makes you immovable. And this is the line most people never cross. You must be willing to lose people, friends, colleagues, relationships that survive only on your compliance. Anyone who requires your self-erasure as the price of connection is not a loss. They are a liability. You cannot negotiate respect with someone who benefits from your weakness. You cannot bargain with someone who holds your self-worth hostage. The lion does not argue for territory. It marks it, and if crossed, removes itself or removes the intruder. Absence is often the cleanest consequence. When you leave without drama, without explanation, without return, you send a message no lecture ever could. Scarcity recalibrates value. Familiarity without boundaries breeds contempt, but distance restores weight. And when you finally understand this, not intellectually, but viscerally, you cross a threshold. Disrespect no longer enrages you. It bores you. It becomes background noise, like static from a broken signal. That's not indifference. That's mastery. And mastery is where the real transformation begins. Once you reach that level, something subtle but irreversible happens inside you. You stop needing people to change. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop fantasizing about being understood by those who profit from misunderstanding you. This is where most people think they've become cold. They haven't. They've become free. At this stage, disrespect still exists in the world, but it no longer enters you. You see it structurally, not emotionally. Someone lashes out. Someone projects. Someone belittles. You don't ask, "What did I do wrong?" You ask, "What pressure are they under?" You're no longer on the chessboard reacting to pieces. You're standing above it, watching patterns unfold. This is the outlier position. The position Machiavelli admired most. The individual who is not ruled by fortune, not pulled by moods, not dragged into other people's unresolved wars. The outlier understands that most behavior is not personal. It's mechanical. Trauma replaying itself. Insecurity seeking relief. Fear disguising itself as arrogance. When someone calls you arrogant, it's often because your boundaries remind them of their own lack. When they call you selfish, it's usually because you stopped being useful. When they accuse you of changing, what they really mean is that the old version of you, the compliant one, is no longer available. You take none of it personally. You take it diagnostically. This perspective is dangerous in the best way. It removes hooks. Without hooks, manipulation fails. Insults lose heat. Provocation fizzles out. You become immune not because you're numb, but because you see too clearly to be pulled into illusions. But clarity demands restraint. Not every challenge deserves engagement. If you bark at every noise, you exhaust yourself. Machiavelli's fox knows when to move and when to remain still. Some battles are won by refusal alone, and sometimes this is crucial. The most devastating response is agreement without surrender. You're selfish. Maybe. You're cold. Possibly. Said without irony, without defense. You don't collapse under the label, and you don't fight it. You remove its power by declining to argue its meaning. This confuses people who rely on predictable emotional reactions. They want resistance. They want justification. They want drama. When they get none, the game ends. But there are moments, rare but real, when withdrawal and fog are not enough. When someone keeps pushing, keeps crossing, keeps testing because they believe you're bluffing. This is where controlled aggression enters, not as explosion, but as precision. Most people misunderstand aggression. They think it's volume, threats, displays. That's tantrum energy. True aggression is calm, measured, surgical. It doesn't announce itself, it acts. A boundary crossed once may earn silence. Crossed twice earns distance. Crossed repeatedly earns consequence. And the consequence is never a speech. It's a change in access. You stop inviting. You stop sharing. You stop including. You remove your presence as if it were oxygen, quietly, completely. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to teach, but to end the pattern. Machiavelli wrote that men must be either well-treated or crushed. In the modern world, crushed doesn't mean destroyed. It means removed from relevance. Someone loses the privilege of your time, your attention, your warmth. They fall out of your inner circle and into the outer cold. This is painful for you at first, not because you're wrong, but because you're breaking an addiction. The addiction to being needed, to being liked, to being indispensable. When you withdraw, there's a void. Silence where noise used to be. Stillness where validation once lived. Many people run back at this stage. They mistake withdrawal discomfort for loneliness. It's not. It's detox. If you don't have a life beyond the people who disrespect you, you'll always return to them. That's why independence is not optional. You need a mission that absorbs you, a craft, a body you're building, a mind you're sharpening, resources you're accumulating, something that continues to grow whether anyone approves or not. When your life has momentum, disrespect loses leverage. You're not fighting for scraps of attention. You're busy constructing something that doesn't depend on it. This is where scarcity emerges naturally. You're no longer always available because you're no longer empty, and people feel that shift instantly. They don't know why, but they sense it. Your replies slow. Your presence becomes intentional. Your words land harder because there are fewer of them. Some will pursue. Others will resent. Both reactions are irrelevant. What matters is this: you no longer chase equilibrium outside yourself. You generate it internally. The opinions of others no longer destabilize you because they no longer define you. And here's the final inversion. When you truly stop caring about being disrespected, it happens less. Not because people became kinder, but because you became unmovable. Opportunists look elsewhere. Predators seek softer ground. This is not magic. It's selection. You have removed yourself from the category of people who can be easily tested, easily pushed, easily consumed. And once you leave that category, the world adjusts. It always does. But there is one final layer left. One that decides whether this becomes a temporary phase or a permanent state. That layer is identity. Everything you've heard so far collapses into one final truth. Disrespect does not end when others change. It ends when you do. Not at the level of tactics, but at the level of identity. Because behavior can be copied, silence can be faked, withdrawal can be performed. But identity leaks through everything. Your walk, your timing, your stillness, your absence. This is where the transformation becomes irreversible. Most people try to act confident. They borrow posture, tone, phrases. But underneath, they're still negotiating for approval, still hoping the world will validate them, still secretly asking, "Am I enough now?" That question alone makes you vulnerable, because anyone who needs an answer can be pressured, teased, ignored, or baited into reaction. The man who kills disrespect for good no longer asks that question. He doesn't wake up thinking about how he's perceived. He wakes up oriented toward what he's building. His sense of worth is not crowdsourced. It is internally generated, reinforced daily through discipline and self-trust. He knows who he is because his actions confirm it, repeatedly, without witnesses. This is why his boundaries feel effortless. They are not rules he enforces. They are expressions of who he is. When someone crosses a line, there is no internal debate, no moral dilemma, no emotional storm. The response is immediate and clean distance, silence, removal, like the body pulling away from heat. At this level, disrespect doesn't trigger anger. It triggers clarity. You see it instantly for what it is. Misalignment. Not an insult to your worth, but proof that someone does not belong in your proximity. And because you no longer fear loss, you don't cling. You release. Quietly. Completely. This is the final upgrade most people never reach, because it requires a kind of solitude they've been taught to avoid. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your decisions, when you stop softening your edges to make others comfortable, there will be silence. And in that silence, you will meet the last enemy, your old self, the version of you that survived by being agreeable, by being useful, by being liked. That version will panic. It will whisper that you're going too far, that you're becoming cold, that you are burning bridges you might need. This is the death rattle of a pattern that once kept you safe, but now keeps you small. Let it die. Every serious transformation demands a symbolic death. You cannot become sovereign while dragging the obedient version of yourself behind you. One identity must end for another to take its place, and what replaces it is not arrogance, not cruelty, not isolation. It is gravity. People feel it when you enter a room, not because you demand attention, but because you don't need it. Your stillness creates pressure. Your silence creates weight. Your absence creates consequence. You are no longer reacting to the atmosphere. You are the atmosphere. This is why Machiavellian power is so often misunderstood. It is not about domination through force. It is domination through self-command, through timing, through restraint, through the ability to walk away without looking back. The final test is simple, but brutal. Can you let people misunderstand you? Can you let them call you distant without correcting them? Arrogant without softening it? Changed without defending the evolution? Because the moment you explain, you step back into negotiation. And sovereignty does not negotiate its existence. The strong do not convince. They demonstrate. From this point forward, Your posture is the answer. Your consistency is the answer. Your absence is the answer. You don't shout, "Respect me." You live in a way that makes disrespect impractical. Some will adapt. Some will disappear. Both outcomes are wins. The world is full of broken people projecting their damage outward. They will always exist. The victory is not eliminating them. The victory is becoming unreachable to them. And when you reach that state, when disrespect no longer provokes you, when silence no longer scares you, when loneliness no longer feels like danger, you will notice something strange. Peace, not the fragile peace of avoidance, the solid peace of alignment. The peace of a man who knows that no insult can touch him, because his worth is no longer up for discussion. This is not the end of the path. It's the beginning of a new operating system, one where you move deliberately. Speak rarely. Choose carefully. And withdraw without guilt. You are no longer here to be liked. You are here to be unmovable. And the world, sooner or later, will adjust.